Hello, I'm Stuart Clayton and welcome back. This is the third lesson in my series on scales, and today we're going to look at the modes, or two of them at least. Now, modes are one of the most misunderstood and often feared topics when it comes to learning any instrument, and there's a lot of sort of mystery surrounding them. But what I'm going to do in this lesson is look at two of the modes and two different ways that you can go about learning them, and hopefully this will help demystify them slightly. It might come that through one way or the other, or a combination of the both, that you gain some understanding of them, but hopefully this will make things a bit clearer. Now we're going to look at the Mixolydian and Dorian modes, and we'll get to those strange sounding scales in a moment, but first of all let's go back to the C major scale. Now before I go on, it's really important that you've completed the first lesson, which was the major scales, and once again that you've got excellent fretboard knowledge, excellent knowledge of your major scales in all 12 keys, all over the fretboard. All of that is going to be really important to your development and understanding of the modes. Okay, now a mode is essentially just a different version of a major scale. For example, if you take the C major scale, which contains all natural notes, but you play from D to the D an octave higher using the same notes, all naturals in that case, you're going to get a mode of the C major scale. So for example, this is the D Dorian mode. Okay, so what I played there was a C major scale essentially, but starting and ending on D, so I played a mode of the C major scale. Now you can build modes from any degree of the major scale, and there are 7 different ones, and I'm just going to briefly explain what they're all called and what they all do. We've actually already covered 2 of the modes. The major and natural minor scales are also modes. The first mode is the Ionian mode, and it's identical to the major scale. So in studying the major scales and natural minor scales in the previous lessons, you've actually already tackled 2 of the 7 modes. Now, modes are appropriate to the chords that we would build off of each degree of the scale. So if we start with C, and we're going to build a chord up in thirds. Okay, now a third is essentially just playing the root note, missing out the next scale degree, and playing the next one, missing out the next one, playing the next one, etc., etc. And what we'll end up with is a C major 7 chord, which is C, E, G and B. Okay, you get this very sort of jazzy sound with it. Now, if you were to see that chord written and you had to improvise a bass line or a solo over it, your immediate choice would be the C Ionian mode or the C major scale. Okay, so this is the C Ionian mode. Identical to the major scale, essentially. Okay, so the next degree of the scale, we have a D, and once again we'll build a chord up in thirds. And that gives us a D, F, A and C. That's a D minor 7 chord, and the mode is D Dorian. So if you saw D minor 7 written in a chord chart, you'd head straight for the D Dorian mode. Okay, the next scale degree is E, and the chord that we build up is E minor 7, and the mode is E Phrygian. This one's got quite a unique sound. Okay, the next scale degree is F, and the chord is F major 7, and the mode is F Lydian. Okay, the 5th degree of the scale is G, and we get a G dominant 7th chord here. Okay, it's a very widely used chord. Got that sound to it. The mode is G Mixolydian. This is one of the modes that we're going to be looking at in detail shortly. The next scale degree is A, and we get an A minor 7 chord and an A Aeolian mode. Now this one is identical to the natural minor scale, so the natural minor scales are effectively Aeolian modes as well. The final mode, or chord rather, is a B minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished chord. That's B, D, F and A, and we get a B Locrian mode. Okay, so that is the 7 modes of the major scale. Now one of the ways that you can go about practicing these is to ascend through one mode and then to descend through the next one. So this is C Ionian ascending and D Dorian descending. Okay, E Phrygian ascending, F Lydian descending. G Mixolydian ascending, A Aeolian descending. And finally B Locrian ascending, and once again C Ionian descending. Okay, and you can play that as one continuous exercise. And that is all 7 modes covered in one exercise. Okay, that makes a good starting off point for the modes, and hopefully that the way I've explained them there, you can understand them at least a little bit better. Okay, we're going to look now in detail at the Dorian mode. Now we're going to start with the D Dorian mode, since it relates back to the key of C. We're going to be dealing with all natural notes once again. So we're going to apply that knowledge and play the scale on one string, just as we've done in the previous lessons. So we're going to start on D at the 5th fret of the A string and work our way up to the 17th and back again. Okay. Okay, that's a D Dorian mode on one string. Let's try that from the open D string. Okay, and of course you can adapt that to be a 2-octave D Dorian mode. Okay, now we're going to look at a bass groove in the key of in the key of C, but we're going to be using a D minor 7 chord and a D Dorian mode. Okay, so that exercise made use of the D Dorian mode, and I tried to use several different areas of the fingerboard in order to really illustrate the sound of the mode. So just to briefly explain what was going on there, I began with just the root and the 5th. I slid from the E up to the F, which is the minor 3rd, and then worked down through scale tones to the C, which is the 7th of the chord. Okay, so that was the first bar. Second bar began in the same way, and then I moved the slide up 1 octave, so E to F, and back again, and then back from the C to the B. Okay, so we have a sort of upper register fill there. The The third bar was identical to the first, and in the final bar I went for an upper register fill. Okay, so we had... Okay, so once again I'm focusing on some chord tones. The F, which is the third of the D minor 7 chord, the D, the C, and the A, which is the root 7 and 5th of the D minor 7 chord. So I made use of chord tones as much as possible in that line. Okay, so you can download the manuscript for that from the website. Be sure to learn that in all 12 keys and to try and get to grips with the modes as I've been sort of laying them out to you. If you just take the Dorian mode as being related to the major scale that's 2 frets below it, then you should find that that's an easier way of thinking about it than you might have come across before. What I'm going to do now is play another Dorian exercise. This is going to make use of the E Dorian mode. Okay, so we're going to be playing. Now this is from the home key of D major. Okay. So we've got an F sharp and a C sharp in there. So we're going to take all of those notes, just play them in E. The backing chord will be an E minor 7. And the bass line will be using chord tones and scale tones from the mode. Okay, so that was an exercise that made use of the E Dorian mode. Now you should download the music for that and study it, see what what note choices I made, see why they work, and if possible get a guitarist or a keyboard player friend to just play some chords for you and just practice your Dorian modes in that way. We're going to move on now to the Mixolydian mode. I'm going to go back to the key of C, and we're going to choose the G Mixolydian mode, since that relates to the key of C. So we're going to be using all natural notes, but playing from G to G. Okay, so armed with that knowledge, we're going to try that just on the one string to start with. We're going to try from the 3rd fret of the E string to just play a 1 octave G Mixolydian mode. Okay, let's try that from the open G. Of course, there are plenty of Gs on the bass that you can practice that from. Let's adapt that to be a 2 octave G Mixolydian mode. Okay, so remember we're playing in the key of C, but we're going from G. Okay, once again I used my favourite trick of ascending in a certain way and descending in a different way in order to get the most out of that exercise. Once again I covered all of the first 12 frets of the bass using the G Mixolydian mode, and I did it in a way that it was as varied as possible. Let's take that scale now and use that in a bass groove. This exercise is going to make use of the G Mixolydian mode, and we're going to use it in a kind of a funk rock context. Okay, so that was a groove that made use of the G Mixolydian mode. I'll just briefly talk you through what I did in that exercise. Okay, started off with the root and the octave, and then walked up from the 3rd, B, through C, up to D. And then the 2nd bar, I played a fill that made use of the 7th, and the octave, and the 5th. Okay, the third bar was identical to the first, and in the fourth bar I played a fill that once again made use of the seventh and the octave, but also the third B. It went like this. Okay, so now some of you might have noticed that I got a sneaky B flat in there, and that's that whole sort of flat third to major third. Really common thing to do in funk and pop music, and it fits really well with the Mixolydian mode in this context. Okay, now we're going to look at another bass groove. This is going to be a funk exercise in using the B flat Mixolydian mode. So the home key is E flat, and this is going to be quite a busy line. So here we go. Okay, so that was a line in B-flat Mixolydian that you can download and study in your own time. Once again, be sure to transpose that into all the other 12 keys as well. Okay, now we're going to look at a slightly different method that we can use to learn the two modes that we've already looked at. And we're going to remain with the Mixolydian mode for the time being. And the way that this method works is we relate the modes back to major scales. Okay, so we're going to take the G Mixolydian mode, and we're just going to think of that as a G major scale, but with a flattened seventh. Okay, so whereas a G major would have the F sharp, if we just flatten that seventh to be an F, we get a G Mixolydian mode. Okay, so if you take your knowledge of the major scales and you just go through flattening the sevenths, playing through them with flat sevens, you're going to be playing Mixolydian modes. Okay, so let's take, for example, G Mixolydian. I'm just going to think of this as G major but with a flattened seventh. Let's play this over 2 octaves. Okay, so that's another way that you can look at the Mixolydian mode. So what you could do now is to go back through your major scales, flatten all the sevenths as you play through them, and just think of them as Mixolydian modes. Now it helps if you can relate them back to a home key. Okay, so obviously the Mixolydian mode belongs to the key of C, okay, because it's the 5th degree of the scale. So if, as you're playing through these scales, you can relate them back to the major scale they belong to, then that's ideal, and that will really help you get the modes together. Now you could do the same thing with the Dorian mode. If we take the D Dorian mode and we relate that back to the D major scale, just as we did with the Mixolydian mode, we're going to flatten the seventh. Okay, D major would have a C sharp in it. Okay, so if we flatten that, we get a C natural. That's what we did with the Mixolydian mode. Now, if we also flatten the third, okay, so the F sharp is going to become an F, we're going to end up with a D Dorian mode. Okay, so I've just taken a major scale, flattened the seventh and the third, and I'm left with a Dorian mode. Let's try that over 2 octaves. So I'm going to think of this as a D major scale, but with a flat 3 and a flat 7. Okay, so once again you can go through the major scales, flattening the thirds and the sevenths, and that will result in Dorian modes. Once again, it's really good for you to remember what key they belong to, and it's really easy with the Dorian mode. Whatever fret you start from, if you just think back 2 frets, that's the home key. Okay, so D Dorian actually belongs to the key of C. Okay, so that's 2 very different ways that you can go about learning the modes and understanding them, hopefully, and I really hope that either one of those methods or a combination of the 2 has helped you to understand them in more detail. Good luck with that, and I'll see you in the next lesson.